All right. Hey guys, so your assignment for today is you're going to do a practice FRQ. So this is a culmination assignment of everything we've talked about in science practices. And yes, this is the exact 2013 FRQ that my students back in the day had to answer. And it's the one part that they couldn't do because I didn't teach them. And so you'll get to see that in just a little bit. So let's take a look at the prompt. So, first of all, I just want you to know you have your own annotated copy of this on Google Classroom. I know this is going to be a little bit hard to see. You're going to answer on notebook paper. Please use a pen. And just a couple pointers. So, you're only answering question one, and the long free responses require about 20 to 22 minutes. Okay. So, that's where you want to think about your time. So, roughly 20 minutes. And this is worth 10 points, or it could earn you 10 points. Don't worry about the rest of this. We're only doing question one. So this is important. Answers have to be written out in paragraph form. Outline is not acceptable. Now, that being said, you don't want to write it like you do an English paper. You're not going to have an introduction and supporting paragraphs. We're going to use claim, evidence, reasoning. And so, since there are multiple sections for this one question, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to label your sections. So, you want to use the letter A, and then you'll respond to part A, then skip a line, and then write your response for part B. Okay, so you do want it to be in sections. Now, each section has to be in complete sentences, not an outline, but you don't want it to look like an English paper when you're done. I'll show you in just a second on part C. There is a mathematical calculation, chi-square. I know, shocker. You don't have to draw that chart, but you are going to want to label your null hypothesis, and you definitely have to show your work. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening in this question one. So, an investigation of fruit fly behavior in a covered choice chamber is used to test whether the spatial distribution of the flies is affected by the presence of a substance. Okay, so that just means where the fly's at. All right. So, to test their preference for glucose, 60 flies were introduced into the middle of the choice chamber at the insertion point. So, that means right here. So, the scientists are going to insert 60 fruit flies into this neutral area. Then they're going to time them. And over time, they're going to monitor which way the fruit flies move. This side is the independent variable. This is the glucose soaked cotton ball. Okay. On this end is a dry cotton ball. Then we're going to observe the position of the flies every minute for 10 minutes. So we're going to watch them. I feel like you know this, like they're fruit flies. They like sugar. This one's soaked in sugar. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so there are, like I said, several different parts to this. So, part A, you're going to predict the distribution of flies, where the fly's at, after 10 minutes, and you have to justify your prediction. So, you decide, are they going to be on the dry cotton ball side, or do you think they'll be on the glucose soaked cotton ball side, and explain why, justify. Part B, you're going to propose a specific improvement to these two parts of the experimental design and explain how that modification will affect the experiment. So, first, here it says experimental control. The thing that stands out to me is this cotton ball is dry and this one's wet. It could be that the moisture content might affect the fly's preference. We don't know. So we need to fix this. Okay, we need to fix this. So we're going to do something to this cotton ball. We don't want to soak it in glucose, but we're going to soak it in another substance, a neutral substance that would give it the same moisture level, but also still serve as a really good control. Then, secondly, you have to look at the environmental factors. So you want to choose a factor to vary in the experiment to prove that it's the glucose that's actually making the flies move. Okay, so you could do something like change the concentration of glucose, make it less perhaps. You could change the temperature. Okay, you could change the light, right? So if this is in a lab, if you're running it with the lights on, maybe run it with the lights off. You could vary the size of the chamber. Really, anything about this that will conclusively prove that it is actually the glucose that's drawing the flies. All right, for part C, the experiment is repeated, but in this case, we're going to put ripe bananas on one end of the choice chamber and unripe bananas on the other end. Once again, the positions of the flies are observed and recorded for every 10 minutes. This is shown in the table below, which is on the next page. So here's what we have. At minute 1, there were 21 flies in the ripe banana end, 18 in the middle, and 21 in the unripe. After 10 minutes, this increased to 45. This is down to 3, and then there's 21 hanging out with the unripe banana. So for part C, you're going to perform the chi-square analysis for the 10-minute time point. That's why I've circled these, okay? You have to specify the null hypothesis. Remember, the null hypothesis is that the flies will have no preference. We have to prove or disprove this to see if they actually did have a preference. And so you will enter that into the table below. Again, if it helps you and you want to draw this table out, go for it. If not, you can just, answer with numbers. I'll leave that up to you. Now, once you do the calculation and you get your chi-square value right here, now we're going to go to the next part. You want to explain whether your hypothesis is supported and justify your explanation. So first, we have to say, okay, are we accepting or rejecting the null, which means there's no preference? Therefore, we either accept your hypothesis or we reject it, right? It just depends on what happens with these numbers. And of course, remember, these are the observed numbers. You have to figure out the expected. But here's the thing. If it's no preference, then we should have equal numbers in every section. So first of all, we'll do this. We'll accept or reject the null. That'll determine if we accept or reject our own hypothesis. All right. And then finally, for part E, they make it way more complicated than it should be. Propose a model. That just means a real-life explanation of why the flies move. Describe the environmental cue. That would be the stimulus. And the affected behavior. That's the response. So they're basically saying, please tell me why flies would move towards the glucose-soaked cotton ball. All right, that's it. You've got the class period to work on it, and then you're going to self-score when you're done to see how you did. And then I'm going to read these bad boys. Have a good day.